Hello, welcome to another live Google Hangout on the Living Income Guaranteed, which is an alternative proposal on how to provide a basic income and consider the many other changes that are required in the system to change the world into a place that is genuinely best for all. And so today we are going to be continuing our discussions on alternative current systems, to the current systems that we have, and we have discussed cryptocurrencies and alternative currencies and how money is created, debt-free money, with various peoples and various organizations and solutions that present an alternative to the ongoing current problem in the mainstream system. So today we're going to be discussing with Francis Ayley, who is the creator and founder of the live currency Cooperative exchange and its Pacific Northwest chapter in the US called Fourth Corner Exchange. As we will be discussing essentially with him, with his expertise of over 40 years on critical analysis on the mainstream bank system and money system, as well as 25 years on being a monetary reformer. We are very interested in discussing with him how he has managed to develop successful and internationally known alternative monetary systems, as well as the banking reforms, monetary reforms, the possibilities in the system, his perspectives on basic income, what can be done. So I welcome you to the Hangout, Francis. Thank you very much for being here.
My pleasure.
And to all of our viewers, I would like to remind you that there will be questions and comments that you can place throughout the live transmission, which will be for about at least 40 minutes, so make sure that your comments, questions come through in that time frame. We also remind you that if you're watching the repetition on the YouTube video, you can also place comments, questions for Francis, and we will let him know so that we can get a response for you as well. So let's begin with our discussion. And first of all, I will also give an overview on how we will lead this discussion, which is, first of all, a presentation on, of course, your project and what you've been doing for the past years, which is telling us about the live currency cooperative exchange and how it has managed to be created now as an international alternative monetary system. So can you share with us about it?
Sure. Well, like you said, I've got a long history in looking at alternative economics for over 40 years and over 25 years in developing alternative monetary systems. I was the founding member and created North London Let's, which is a local exchange trading system. North London Let's operates in North London, UK. I did that over 25 years ago, at the beginning of the 1990s. That was an interesting project. That was my first hands-on approach in creating an alternative. And during the last 25 years, I've learned a lot, not only about alternative monetary systems, but about what's wrong with the mainstream monetary system. So my family and I moved to the US in 1998, 99, somewhere around there. And when I got to the US, Washington State, people were fascinated about all the monetary reform stuff. And they started talking to me about setting one up here. So we eventually created Fourth Corner Exchange, which had some of the best features of Let's and time banks and a couple of other alternative monetary systems. And Fourth Corner Exchange has been operating since 2002, and we've actually been trading since 2004, so 10, 11 years. And unbelievably, our members have traded over that time, over $1.5 million worth of goods and services. So most alternative monetary systems, actually most of them die in the first 18 months, 2 years. You know, I've seen hundreds of systems be set up and run for a while, and then they just die of inertia or lack of interest or apathy or whatever. We have managed to be not only successful, but we've actually ended up being one of the most successful alternative monetary systems probably in the world, if you actually want to look at it like that. The other two that are really successful are Berkshires in the northeast of the USA. They were created by the Schumacher Society. And they were really lucky. They got like $500,000 worth of funding to back them and create an alternative, which was great. We've done what we've done exclusively without any kind of major input or backing, just through members' contributions and yearly membership fees. And the other big success story in terms of alternative monetary systems recently is Ithaca Hours, which has been going for a long time, 25, 30 years, maybe longer than that. That was founded by Paul Glover many years ago. So the three big systems are Fourth Corner Exchange, Ithaca Hours, and Berkshire's. Well, we are on a par with Berkshire's and Ithaca Hours, and our methodology is different. We've created a different, in terms of the technicality system. But overall, we've actually been very successful. So to put that into context for the Life Currency Cooperative Exchange, about 3 years ago, the group started talking about, well, how about if we take this fantastic experiment and made it global? What would we need to do that? Because we're much more than a local currency. You know, we're spread over the Pacific Northwest, and we have some members in Canada. We've actually had some members in Mexico and a couple of other countries. They tended to come and go. It's very difficult to set up a local chapter of Fourth Corner Exchange. But that's what we're looking at changing. And we're looking at how to take this experiment, which in terms of a monetary experiment has been exceptionally successful, and actually turn it into a global organization. So the Fourth Corner Exchange is well established and has been trading for quite some time and is very successful. The Life Currency Cooperative Exchange is in the process of being created. I'm actually the main programmer for the database, so I'm writing all the back-end code, and we're hoping to have everything ready by January next year, and that's when we're going to do our official launch. So that's a brief history of what's been going on.
Yeah, so we are essentially creating a premise for it, and to interested in, they can also visit the website Fourth Corner Exchange so that they can get to know how is it working in the Pacific Northwest, Washington area in the US, so that once that it goes global, it can be, you know, you stand as a point of reference for anyone else that maybe, you know, in other countries can be pondering how is it going to work there. And that was part of my questions, if you have any set plans as to how it's going to work on an international level, because it's certainly one step forward.
Yes. Well, the main change in terms of the mechanics is in rewriting the database so that it's international and takes account of time zones and geographical locations and stuff like that. So that's all technical stuff. In terms of how the thing actually works, Fourth Corner Exchange is essentially a cooperative economy, which is radically different from the mainstream economy. Nearly every member that joins Fourth Corner Exchange and trades, at some point they they go through a stage of initiation, if you like. they transfer their allegiance from the mainstream competitive economy to a cooperative economy, and it's an interesting transition to watch, because everybody is so used to the competitive, usurious bank-issued monetary system, to give it its full title. I mean, bank-issued money is usurious, and it's competitive-based, and it's for-profit, etc., etc. And it's seriously dysfunctional. We need to replace it. And going from using that kind of economic system and monetary system, it's an education. So a lot of the work that we do is actually educational. We train people, we teach people why we need an alternative monetary system and why we need an alternative economy. And that's an important part of this process, educating people. And once they get to experience a cooperative economy, they're usually quite surprised. It's like, wow, I've always wanted to be able to work cooperatively and altruistically with and for my community members, but I've never known how to do it. And so we give them the tools and the education to be able to do that. So we're going to be taking that globally. And really speaking, the need for monetary reform is extremely urgent. It really is a pressing issue, and there's so few people who know anything about it really at all. I've met thousands of people who have tried alternative monetary systems. Some have been really successful, some haven't. In fact, many have not. And many people become disillusioned. So there's a big educational component that needs to be done here. People need to be reminded that people have been stepping outside of the mainstream economy for a long time. I mean, starting with the Equitable labor exchange from years back, the 1800s in London. That was created by Robert Owen back in 1840 something. You know, even back in those days, people realized that there's something seriously wrong with bank issued money and we need to be looking for a replacement. My contribution to this is that, having done all this research over the years as an independent investigator into the mainstream economic system, is that there are viable alternatives to bank issued money and there are viable alternatives to capitalism. And my contribution is to teach people and educate people about what those alternatives are and show people how to transition from the mainstream economy into something that fits with where people actually are at and what they actually want to be doing. Most people don't want to be using competitive money. When I talk to people, 99% of them are like, you know, if there was a viable alternative, I'd consider using it. I don't want to be using this competitive, antisocial, destructive monetary system and economic system. So a large part of this has to do with educating people. So I think a lot of the work that we're going to be doing here in the Pacific Northwest, when we take this project global, will be educating people about the alternatives and why they need to switch from competitive bank issued money to a cooperative system.
So how does an equitable and sustainable money system function?
Wow, very differently. My take on this is that there are three big illusions about the mainstream monetary system. There are three illusions of money that most people believe and buy into and go along with, and so they have serious misconceptions about what money is and how it works. The first illusion is that money is real. Money isn't actually real. It's an idea. For me, it's the idea that someone owes something to someone else. I owe something to someone else, or someone owes something to me. It's based on private property relations and private property ownership in that sense. But money isn't real, it's an idea. And as ideas go, it's not a particularly brilliant one. There are better ideas to base your economic system on. The second incorrect idea about money is that money is valuable in and of itself, intrinsically. That is not true. Money is a symbol for wealth. It's not actually wealth itself. I mean, there's a difference between a field of wheat and a $1,000 bill. You know, the field of wheat is something you can harvest, you can turn into bread and use as grain. The $1,000 note is actually, at the end of the day, just a piece of paper. It's nothing else. It's a symbol for wealth. And people get the two confused. They think money actually is in and of itself valuable, and it's not. So that's the second illusion of money. The third illusion is that money is neutral. All the mainstream economic textbooks and all the writings in classical and neoliberal economic theory say or assume this axiom of the neutrality of money. They assume that money is neutral, and actually it's so easy to disprove that. It's quite ridiculous, but nobody does it because nobody thinks about doing it. That axiom is very rarely stated. I've read hundreds of books on economics over the years, and very rarely have I come across anyone who's actually willing to say that that is the case. But recently, some mainstream economists have actually been talking about, you know, you realize that everything is based on the neutrality of money, and maybe money isn't quite as neutral as we assume it is. And the reality is, you know, if money is proven, mainstream money this is, if it's demonstrated that it's actually not a neutral medium of exchange, then everything the mainstream economists talk about turns into quicksand. It's like it's invalid, it disappears. And it doesn't hold up. All their theories just disintegrate. It's like, you know, a revolution in thinking. It's the difference between believing that all the stars and the sun on the planet go around the Earth and the Earth is stationary in space, and suddenly realizing like, oops, no, the Earth is one planet and it goes around the sun and we're part of a solar system and a galaxy, etc., etc. I mean, that's the magnitude of the change. So that's the third illusion about money, that money is a neutral medium of exchange, and actually it isn't, and it's very easy to disprove that.
It is quite baffling also how, you know, students nowadays in economics are realizing that the issue of how money is created is not at all discussed in their classes in major universities around the world. So they're uniting, in fact, and they are now claiming that they have to create this kind of course and that this type of material should be part of their general curriculum, which is not currently, and it's amazing. And I'm just glad that the subject of not only monetary reform, but how money is created, the nature in itself of money, is now being demanded by economic students around the world. So in this discussion of, now that you've specified what money isn't, can you tell us about the life dollars, or which is the life currency in the alternative system that you've created? Life dollars, as I understand, they're called in the US. So what is it? What backs it? How does it exist? Who issues it? Can you share with us?
Yeah, sure. Well, having set up North London Let's in London 25 years ago, when I got to the Pacific Northwest and people said, wow, let's set up an alternative monetary system. What did you do in London? And I said, I helped create North London Let's and administered it for years. They were like, oh, great, let's set up a Let's system. And actually I said, no, you can set up a Let's system and I'll help you do that, but that's not what I'm interested in doing. And they said, well, what are you interested in doing? And I said, I'm actually interested in pushing the envelope here. I want to know what kind of monetary system it would take to actually support a universal cooperative economy. And so we spent 2 years, from 2002 to 2004, there was a group of us who basically met every week, and we went into this really in depth. And the question we were trying to answer was, if there was an alternative monetary system that supported pro-social behavior, cooperative behavior, non-destructive way of operating economically, if there was such a monetary system, what actually would it look like? And so we hammered that out over 2 years, and we came up with life currency. What we're going to be launching is life currency. So we looked at all the different monetary experiments that have been conducted over the last, 200 or so years, and there's been quite a few, although they're never discussed in mainstream economics classes. As you pointed out, they don't talk about where money comes from, who creates it, who has the power to create it. They don't even talk about the difference between usurious money and non-usurious money, which is insane. I mean, that's one of the primary differences. And we came up with a design where the people are issuing the currency, and that means that instead of having a private for-profit corporation, i.e. the banks, issuing the currency, and that means the power to issue the currency is not in the hands of the people, we created a system where the people are the primary creators of the currency. They create the currency as they trade, as they just go about their normal economic daily activities. And what we created is an unlimited supply currency. Again, this is something that's not talked about in the mainstream textbooks, but I've got this category of limited supply currency. Any currency where the supply is limited, where the amount of money in circulation cannot expand and contract the way that it needs to in order to fulfill the needs of the people. I mean, sometimes you need to buy stuff and sometimes you don't need to buy stuff. And the ideal monetary system would expand and contract in accordance with that. What we have instead of that, because we don't have that, we don't have an unlimited supply currency that can expand and contract. We have a limited supply currency in the form of bank money, usurious bank money on top of that. That is one of the major causes for booms and busts, and what they call euphemistically the business cycle, as if it's natural and normal and inevitable. It isn't. It's actually a dysfunctional symptom of a dysfunctional monetary system and a dysfunctional economy. So we created a unlimited supply currency where the people are issuing the money themselves, and that has radically different consequences and ends up with a very, very different kind of economy. It's a pro-social cooperative economy, and people really enjoy themselves. I mean, the stress and the pressure and the psychological strain of trying to deal with antisocial bank-issued money usually causes people so much grief, and it's torturous trying to figure out how to make ends meet, how to make sure you have enough money, when for 99% of the people, they actually have all the goods and services in terms of, you know, their skills, their abilities, their resources. They have everything they need in order to be able to survive in their community, in their economic environment. The money system, the mainstream monetary system, bank-issued money, gets in the way of them actually doing that, because it interjects a third party that has no interest in the well-being of the environment, in the community, of the individual concerned. The bankers are there just to make a profit for themselves. And those bankers, if they can't make a profit, they won't let you have the money. And that prevents people from being able to exchange their goods and services freely. It's ironic that the neoliberal bankers and economists talk about, you know, the free market. The usurious bank-issued monetary system actually prevents people from exchanging their goods and services in a free market situation. It is the antithesis of a free market economy, and yet that's what they're promoting it as. It's insane. But anyway, you know, the amount of lies that are coming from the bankers is just unreal. I mean, and that's one of the most important things to realize. Most of what the bankers and the mainstream economists are talking about is basically a very biased, twisted, and totally inaccurate view of reality, and the economic system they're defending and proposing is unworkable. Usurious money in the long term is actually a massive Ponzi scheme. It's a variation on a Ponzi scheme. And as the amount of interest that is owed on the debt money that bankers create increases exponentially, and it now far exceeds the amount of interest in terms of debt that's owed, is now massively larger than the actual amount of money in circulation. Inevitably, we're going to reach a crunch point, a global crunch point, and that whole system is going to fail, and it's going to topple. It's a house of cards, and it's time limited, and it's going to fail. All Ponzi schemes come to a nasty, ugly end, and the mainstream bank-issued money system is no exception. It's a variation on a Ponzi scheme, and it's unsustainable, and it's going to come to a really nasty end. And we need to be prepared. We, the people, need to be prepared for that end, and we need to have a basic understanding of what's going on and an understanding of what our alternatives are. And there are really, really good alternatives out there, and the sooner we switch to them, the better.
So in terms of how money is issued, in terms of like live currency or live dollars, do people issue it themselves? You said that they essentially create the money as a trade with others. Can you explain to us a little bit further how does this actually work? And at the same time, with this, how can principles of responsibility and justice and cooperation are embedded within how this system operates, meaning your alternative?
Yes, well, the process of money creation itself is really simple. When you join Fourth Corner Exchange, you start with an account. It's essentially a balance of zero, and you earn live currency and you spend live currency. So if I do an exchange with you, if you have an account and your account is zero and my account is zero, and you buy some of my goods and services, I provide you with those goods and services, and then you transfer live currency from your account to my account. So if I'm charging you 2 units, it might be 2 life dollars. You transfer 2 life dollars from your account to my account. So your account now reads -2 and my account now reads +2. It's that simple. There's no third party involved. The agreement is exclusively between you and me. There's no external authority involved. We don't have to get permission to trade. We don't need anyone else's money to trade. That's how the money is issued, and that's a very simple, straightforward mechanism. There are inherent in that whole system other possibilities. For instance, if a group of people in a particular city, say the city where I live, Bellingham, were to get together and decided that they wanted to build a school or a hospital, they could collectively decide to create as much alternative currency as they needed in order to carry out that project. And then they could pay that back over a period of time. So the possibilities here are astonishing, really, really amazing. And these things have actually been done. What I've just described has actually been done with using alternative money. There are some really magnificent examples of that. What was the second question you asked me?
How is it that values like responsibility and cooperation and justice, fairness in essence, are embedded within how this system works?
That's a very good question. What I have seen is that because basically people want to operate within a cooperative economy, I've seen how people make that transition from the mainstream economy to a cooperative economy. My belief is that fundamentally we're actually all social creatures. We're social animals. We need to be part of a group. We need to operate within a group, and that includes operate economically. And many people want to operate in a cooperative manner. I mean, there are a few individuals who are, very individually oriented, but most of us are collectively oriented, and most of us want to work in a collective system. So really, it's not a matter of teaching people a new skill. They already know what they want and what they feel, and they know what is right. So it's really just providing them with the opportunity to do what they instinctively and naturally want to do, which is work harmoniously and cooperatively with people. Our cooperative instincts go back millions of years. Just as animals, we've always lived as groups. The hunting gathering societies, you don't have hundreds of individuals, you have small groups, and then you have larger groups. So we're a group animal. So that stuff has to actually be beaten out of us when we're younger. And that's what happens with people when they're introduced to bank-issued money. They're not given the opportunity to fully utilize and engage in cooperative behavior. And so they have no experience. Most people have very little or no experience of working within a cooperative society, and especially a cooperative economy. So it's not a matter of teaching people skills that they don't already have. It's a matter of giving them the opportunity to actually do what they instinctively want to do. And it's very easy. For most people, making that transition is straightforward and easy. And the most prevalent comment I've got from members in False Coin Exchange over the last 12 years has been, my God, I didn't realize that it's actually possible to be so pro-social and to actually work cooperatively in this kind of way. I've always wanted to do this, and I've just never had the opportunity. That is one of the commonest pieces of feedback I've heard from members over the years, which is great.
It seems that it is more like the current mainstream monetary system has created a coercive force upon us that changes our behavior, that inherent, as you say, sense of working together as a collective, doing essentially what would be best for everyone. We are not able to do that because of how money works, because of how we are tending to use money and so forth. So this really clarifies then how it goes hand in hand with creating a cooperative economy. And shifting gears a little bit on our discussion here, I'd like you to give us your perspectives and comments, of course, as a monetary reformer and someone that has been creating alternative systems and solutions. We would like you to share what your perspective on basic income is. Of course, we are promoting it, but we've also realized something. How is it going to be funded? Could it be that it requires monetary reform to make it a reality? So what's your take on this?
Yes, I think that some kind of universal basic income, a living income, as you call it, is essential to a civilized society. I think if you don't have that, you basically don't have a civilized society economically. The way to achieve that, though, within the mainstream monetary system is full of problems, challenges, and difficulties. Basically, bank-issued money is not designed to maintain and support that kind of economy. And so it's antithetical, right at its very fundamental core, it's antithetical to a living income, which is why I think that it's been almost impossible. In fact, I don't know of anywhere that it's been done successfully, maybe in some of the more socialist countries, although they're actually pushing against capitalism the whole time. So they're pushing against the mainstream force. They have to fight to have any kind of right to any kind of basic income for people, you know. Capitalism is inherently antisocial and anti-cooperative, right at its core. So my take on it is that if we're going to have a universal basic income of any kind whatsoever, then monetary reform is a prerequisite. We have to have whole-scale, fundamental monetary reform. We have to change the money system as it exists now, and we have to implement a pro-social monetary system that supports cooperative principles and supports a cooperative economy before or in hand with a universal basic income. But I do think a universal basic income is inevitable, and it's very, very necessary. And it's very durable. And again, in the mainstream economy, it can't really be done because the bankers are going to say, well, why should we issue money so that, you know, we just give money away to people? That's not how our monetary system works. But in a cooperative economy, that's so easy to organize.
I see, I mean, what you've created with Fourth Corner, for example, and that is an example of how human beings can actually work in a monetary system that supports this kind of behavior, cooperation, equity, and justice, and so forth. But in the sense of creating this massive monetary reform, I fully agree that we would require a lot of education, first of all, as to why it is necessary. It is coming to be more of people's awareness, but at the same time, what's your perspective on the monetary reform in itself in the current mainstream system, or let's say in the US? How possible do you see it? What would be required, if so, to make it a reality?
To bring about monetary reform in the USA?
Yes.
Wow. I think that's going to be really difficult. There's no one in the political arena that I'm aware of who is talking about monetary reform. I rarely come across any politicians who are even interested, even remotely interested in this stuff. Even the Green politicians, they're basically unaware of the need for monetary reform and mainstream economic reform. So I don't see that there's much hope of actually changing the existing system or trying to work more cooperatively within the existing system. I think that's potentially a waste of resources and just ends up not working. We actually need to go back to first principles and create an alternative monetary system and a cooperative economy based on that monetary system, and have it completely outside of the mainstream, disconnected completely from the mainstream monetary system and economic systems. I've sort of given up on trying to reform the existing system. It can't be done. I haven't seen much in the way of examples that have actually worked out very well. So I don't have any hope for reforming the existing system. We need to just step outside of it to whatever degree we're capable of. Not everybody can, but everybody can step outside of it to some degree, even if it's only theoretical, and realize that we have to leave that system behind. Like I said, mainstream money system is going to crash and burn. In 20 years' time, I doubt if it's going to exist in any form whatsoever. It's going to be an empty shell. And so sometime in the next 15, 20 years, we are literally going to be forced to make this change. The only real question is, do we do it voluntarily now, or do we have it forced on us later when the bank-issued money system collapses? But reform of the mainstream system, I don't think so.
It is part of my concern how when creating alternatives, there's still people that maybe not have the time, the effort, the awareness, education to be able to join one. So when looking at these kind of alternatives, I always worry about those that have no means to kind of get out of the shackles of the current system. They're working 12, 14 hours a day. What could be done with these individuals? And also, I would like to know if this is part of what you have in plan or in mind when creating an alternative system. What to do with those that are most, let's say, enslaved in terms of time, money, lack of awareness of possibilities. What's your perspective on this?
There's no easy, quick solution to that problem. If you're enslaved within the mainstream monetary system, then that's where you're at. And breaking those bonds of slavery is not an easy task. But what I will say is that spontaneous change, like the fall of the Berlin Wall, which nobody expected, I didn't see it coming. Nobody that I've talked to over the years saw that coming. These changes can sometimes happen amazingly quickly and be completely radical. I mean, basically, Germany was unified in one 24-hour period. Suddenly, it went from being split with two different cultures and societies and relatives being separated and denied access to each other. Suddenly, it was all that just vanished and disappeared. I wouldn't be surprised if the mainstream money system doesn't go down in a similar kind of way. It could happen very quickly overnight. What we're trying to do in the Pacific Northwest with the Life Currency Cooperative Exchange is prepare people, educate people, so that when this does happen, they have some idea about what to do. But as regards to helping people immediately on the ground level on an individual basis right now, that can't be done easily. People have to be willing to take responsibility for their situation, and if they're stuck in a situation of wage slavery, they need to recognize that's where they're at, and they need to start working for themselves to create alternatives. I mean, one of the things you can do if you're stuck in a job that takes up a lot of your time is you can still participate in a cooperative economy, but do it lightly on the edges. Just introduce yourself gently. So what I would say to someone who's stuck in that position is either get together with a group of people and create an alternative monetary system, or when we're international, join the Life Currency Exchange and partake in little ways. Just start small and continue trading in the alternative monetary system and explore the possibilities. And most importantly, rebuild those social connections. Everything goes back to the social connections and to our innate cooperative instincts. If we reawaken those and we do it on a collective level, amazing things can happen.
In this regard, and discussing on what if people that need money, for example, and this is also a question from Teppo Sarka. He's saying, what if someone issues a lot of live currency and their account goes quite a lot to the negative side? Because of that, what will be the limit for issuing currency this way? Or would there be, I would ask as well.
That's a very good question. I get asked that question a lot at the new member meetings that I run. It's because most people, when they're coming from a competitive mainstream mindset, they assume, wrongly as it happens, they assume that when people are given the power to issue their own currency, that they will abuse that power. Well, over the space of 12 years that I've been running Fourth Corner Exchange, we have now done, I think it's 18,000 exchanges. I think that's the number that we've presently done. And like I said, it's $1.5, $1.6 million worth of goods and services that have been exchanged. We have had only one person who has abused that system. There's only one person who's actually run up a commitment, a debt, to the full extent and then refused to pay it back. So out of all those exchanges over a 10, 11, 12, I think it's 12 years now we've been running the full thing, period, we've had one person who seriously abused it. And she actually now regrets it. She ran up a full commitment limit, and what happened was when people saw that she was abusing the system, they stopped trading with her. So there is an innate built-in mechanism, because people could see, oh, it looks like, you know, you're not contributing, giving anything back to the community, but you're taking everything out. They saw that she was doing this and fairly quickly responded. And when her membership lapsed and she didn't renew it, it's so ironic. 2 years later, she reapplied and said she wanted to join again. And I said, well, yes, you can join again, but you have to be willing to accept the commitment that you, the debt that you ran up before. And because we don't charge interest on that, it was exactly the same amount of life dollars. So there was no extra interest to be charged on that. It's simply like, these are the goods and services you took out of the communal goods pool of goods and services. You're now required to pay them back. And she said, but I want my account to start at zero. And I said, I'm sorry, that's not the way it works. You have responsibilities towards the group. You've taken this amount of goods and services out of the group. If you want to re-engage, then you have to put them back into the pot before we will let you spend anymore. So there is a self-regulating mechanism here. If you think about it as like, if you're part of a small village, I mean, my grandmother grew up in an English village in the north of England, and she said that everybody knew each other, and there was no question that you would abuse your relationships with those other people, your economic relationships, because you all lived together and you all needed each other. It was insane to think that you were going to act antisocially. So what we're doing is we are rebuilding those community bonds and those connections and that sense of dependency and need for other people, that people very quickly realize that, you know, if they mess around or act antisocially in our system, there are penalties. And that's not true in the mainstream monetary system. So that's a part of the re-educational aspect of what needs to be done. That most, in fact, nearly all the cooperative economic systems that I've seen, there is nearly always some kind of self-regulating mechanism to prevent this kind of abuse. And if people do abuse the system, there are very powerful measures to stop them. So I'm not saying people don't abuse it, but it's very easy to avoid.
Yeah, exclusion is by far I see the most effective, because then the person has no one to trade no longer with. I guess it's just like when you give bad reputation, bad feedback to someone on eBay or Amazon, and right, you will no longer buy that product or do commerce with that person. So I also agree that this is also a way to see economics differently, and how democracy plays a role, how these principles play a role, how that person took responsibility for their debt. These things that, because we live in such a dissociated system, so to speak, we have no direct awareness of, or the consequence that we create, because it's just so all over the place, and someone can go to another country and continue the same abuse. But when you have this kind of local currency and this agreement with people, I mean, money is overall an agreement placed with people that commit to a certain way of acting and being part of the community, which I see it's very much needed. And I see that life currency is, of course, creating that kind of results, which are very much needed as an example of what can be done in this world, and that many people don't even have an awareness of. So that's why also thank you for sharing on that. And thanks, Step Up, for your question. So one of the things that I would also like to know is what other challenges precisely have you faced when it comes to introducing to people not only to an alternative way to issue money, but the reasons and their actions within it. You've already explained one point of abuse, but is there any others? And so how can we as society, as community, kind of assist each other to get past those fears or those problems? How can we help or pitch in, so to speak, to create further awareness on these solutions?
Well, one of the most important things to realize about the mainstream monetary system is it's an antisocial system, and it makes illegal altruistic behavior, cooperative behavior. It makes it illegal for us to behave according to our innate instincts. And people don't see that. They're not aware of just how much they are affected psychologically as well as limited physically in terms of what they can do. And so building an awareness that, yes, it's possible to have a cooperative economy. Yes, it's possible to have a collective, cooperative economic system and monetary system, that these things have been done successfully in the past. I've spoken to many professors of economics over the years because I've read so widely on this subject. And it's really interesting. One of the things that they are very often completely unaware of are the successful social experiments and economic experiments that have been conducted, where operating in a cooperative manner has worked magnificently. And they simply are unaware of this. It's not allowed to be known within the mainstream mass media system and the mainstream economic system that we have real alternatives, that a cooperative economy is not only a realistic alternative, it's actually a much superior and desirable alternative. In fact, the cooperative economy, in broad outline, as I define it, works much better than the mainstream economy. And people don't know that. They're completely unaware of that. And the biggest obstacle is because nobody has really experienced this kind of cooperative, supportive, life-enhancing way of interacting with other people economically. They're totally unaware of that possibility. They don't know it exists, which is why the educational component of this project is so important. It's really important to make people aware of what their real alternatives are and how superior some of those alternatives really are. And again, that's one of our main goals when we're going to be launching this project globally in January.
Could there be something like basic income integrated in how your system operates, or do you see that there's really no need for it?
Sorry, ask me that question again.
Would there be a possibility to integrate a basic income model in how live currency will operate, or do you see no need for it?
There would be much less need for it, but I still see a need for it. Fundamentally, again, if we go back to the reality of the English village as it used to be hundreds of years ago, fundamentally, everybody was working for the common good. And that meant that everybody had something different and special and unique to offer the group. There might be someone who's a poet, and people valued the poetry. They want to hear the poets' poetry, their songs, their music. I mean, in the old Celtic tradition, bards were honored. They would travel from one group, one village to another, singing their songs and telling their tales. And nobody thought, like, but this person isn't working for their living. They're not growing the food. They're not out there doing the manual labor. Everybody realized, like, what this person has to offer, we all want and need. We're all going to go to the bard's evening and watch the play, or you know, listen to the music or hear the stories. And so they were happy. They were delighted to feed, clothe, house these people as they wandered from place to place. Nobody challenged or questioned that. We all have something to offer the group. We all have something to offer society. A very moving story, when I was setting up North London Lefts many years ago in the early 90s in London, UK, we were getting hundreds of members signing up, and I always run a new member meeting to introduce people to these ideas. There was a 92-year-old woman sitting there, and she listened to the whole presentation. And at the end, she said, "This is wonderful. It's fantastic. It's lovely. And I have no way of joining. I can't join this group." And I said, "Why not?" And she said, "I have nothing to offer anyone." And I said, "How old are you?" And she said, "Well, I'm 92. And I said, "So tell me, you know, just give me 2 minutes introduction to what have you been doing for your 92 years? And she kind of rambled on for 2 or 3 minutes. And I grabbed a pen and paper and I wrote down a list of all the things, the goods and services that I thought she could offer. And she had totally invalidated all these things. So when she finished, and I said, "Listen, I've got a list here, and I've just counted 30 different goods and services that I think other people in this room would be willing to buy from you." And I ran through the list, and right at the top was she was a master weaver. She knew how to weave cloth. And there was someone in the room that said, "I've been dying to learn how to weave cloth. You have to teach me." And this woman was oblivious of this because it had no monetary value. And so we have to get out of this mindset of the only things that are valuable are what the usurious bank-issued monetary system says are valuable. People have skills and abilities and talents and knowledge and insight that other people are wanting and needing, and that if they could, they would be happy to pay something towards. But basically, this comes down to living collectively. We have been isolated and separated and disempowered by mainstream bank-issued money. And this is a process of learning how to live cooperatively and collectively and in a pro-social manner. And what the alternative monetary systems that I've been engaged in over the years have done, they've simply provided a structure, a system, whereby people can go back to that collaborative, cooperative behavior.
Of course, we are the ones that make the system, and this also gives us also an expansion as to what we have been saying as living income with regards to the mainstream notion of just giving money to people as a basic income. And we are the ones that are saying, hey, let's start integrating this kind of principles, this cooperative notion of giving and receiving and responsibility, and you living as part of a society. So I very much thank you for all of this expertise and all of these experiences that you've gathered over the years with what you're already applying. So people can, of course, go to the websites that I will place in the information section of this video as well, so that you can learn more. I definitely suggest reading all of the literature that is there, the articles, the questions, because that will give you a larger idea of what is going on in relation to Fourth Corner and Life Currency. We have one question before we close the Hangout. So this is from Jean Kenny, and she's saying, how is a model of Life Currency able to be transferred to other communities, such as a town, city in another state or country?
That's another good question. When we started trading in Fourth Corner Exchange back in 2004, it was just in Whatcom County, so it was like 25, 30 miles around Bellingham. And one of my friends moved from Bellingham to Port Townsend, which is on the other side of the Olympic Peninsula, so it's like 40 miles away. And it's across a stretch of water, so there's a real gap there. And what he said to me was, he said, look, I really want to remain part of Fourth Corner Exchange and continue to using life dollars, but, you know, I'm moving to Port Townsend. How can this work? And I said, I have no idea. Let's try an experiment. Why don't you try setting up a local chapter there? And, you know, we'll just assume that you're going to be part of Fourth Corner Exchange and we'll see what happens. Well, it worked beautifully. He brought on some board, some members there. And then there was, most of the trading was done within Port Townsend for that group. But there was some inter-trading that was done. So about 2 to 3% of the trading that's done within Fourth Corner Exchange now is done between members who geographically are quite separate. They're in different parts of the state. And we have now groups in Port Townsend, in Bellingham, in several other cities, including Seattle. And basically, most of those people do the majority of their trades within a 20, 25, 30-mile radius of where they live. So they have a local group that's established there, and the majority of the trading is, within that geographical area. But if they need something that can't be provided locally, they're free to expand out and trade with anybody else. Basically, we are a private members club. That is our legal status. We're a private members club, and you are free to trade with anyone, anywhere. So we have some members in Canada. So if I needed to, if someone had something that I needed in Canada, there's nothing whatsoever to stop me from receiving their goods and services or providing those other members in Canada with goods and services. There's no real barrier at all. The fact that you're in a different geographical location or even a different country is irrelevant. If I'm a computer programmer, if I'm providing a program, or I'm writing a program, or I'm helping someone design and implement a programming system, I'm free to exchange my goods and services with anyone anywhere around the globe. If I'm working within the mainstream economy, it's exactly the same with the alternative money. No difference whatsoever.
Okay, so in essence, we have to also consider that when you have this kind of currency, bringing in more people will, of course, expand your network, and so will make the currency more effective for yourself as well. So as with everything, as you mentioned, the relationships, creating the network, and also inviting people that you maybe want to get to know better in terms of trust, relationships, commerce, they have something that you'd like. Is this how you can get people into, for example, a chapter that is created by yourself as an individual in some other town? Is that how it could be?
Absolutely. Whenever I need some goods and services, or my family needs some goods and services, for instance, last year I needed a new laptop. Instead of going to the local store and paying traditional cash, the first thing I did was I scoured the directory in Fourth Corner Exchange to see if anybody was selling computers and specifically laptops. Well, I couldn't find anybody. So what I did was I went to a friend and said, hey, you sell laptops. Would you be willing to sell me one of your laptops for local currency? And he was like, what? So I explained the whole system to him, and he said, wow, that's interesting. I mean, he sort of knew about Fourth Corner Exchange, but he'd never participated and he didn't know the details. Well, he decided to sell me the laptop for live dollars. And lo and behold, he ended up joining the system, and now he's an active participating member. And so I've actually bought like 4 computers from the guy now. And so far, I haven't spent any national currency on laptops or computer equipment. I mean, minimal. I get most of my computer supplies through him. And, the alternative currency for him is just one small part of his overall income. And yet he's, fully participating to the degree that he is. So that is the way to get people signed up and involved. You go to them, you say, look, there's this alternative currency. I'd like to buy your goods and services from you. I don't have the national currency, bank issue money to pay you, but I can pay you either in equivalent, goods and services, or I can pay you in the alternative money. And then just open a discussion with people and make them aware of the options and leave them to decide. But that's like how 80 or 90% of the people that I've signed up have actually joined the system. I've asked them to purchase their goods and services because I or one of my family members or sometimes a friend has need of them. And it's a great way to get people involved.
Absolutely. So that creates a sense of community and getting to know your neighbor. Absolutely. So we are running out of time. Alexander Boone is asking if there is a list of current chapters and their locations. I assume it's on the website.
Yes, the main chapter is in Bellingham. We have that's the founding group. We have local chapters in, gosh, Everett, Seattle, Port Townsend. There's 3 or 4 other places, and we've got a few individual members in Canada. We've actually got a couple of people in Austin, Texas, and there's a couple other states. But yes, a lot of this information, I don't remember now whether as a non-member you can find out the locations, but there is information about that on the website. Definitely in the FAQ. It's worth reading.
Okay, so we've run out of time, but thanks a lot, Francis, for your time, for sharing yourself and sharing all of your experiences and education. We will certainly keep an eye on the development of the live currency cooperative exchange next year. This has been like a little bit of a premise for it. And also we will continue giving people feedback on whichever other aspect you'd like us to be aware of in terms of their development. Maybe a hangout can be scheduled some other time to see how it grows internationally. That would be very cool as well. Thank you for your work.
Thank you. It's been a real pleasure.
And thanks to you, the viewer, as well for watching. Remember, if you have any other comments, questions, you didn't make it live, you can place it on the YouTube comment section and we will let Francis know. Thank you and see you next time. Bye, Francis.
Bye for now.